Well, moving on, a House subcommittee holding the first hearing on the origins of COVID-19 yesterday. One witness slamming China for refusing to cooperate in international investigations. Watch.
We are primarily here because the Chinese government has done everything in its power to prevent the type of investigation into the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic that is 3 years overdue and still urgently required. We are also here because there is more that we in the United States can and must do to push forward, even if China continues to stonewall.
Joining me now is former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland. She is an American Conservative Union board member and author of the book Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People. KT, your reaction to what we've learned so far in these hearings on the origins of COVID and the lab leak theory, which looks more and more likely.
Look, on day one, I said it was a lab leak theory out of the Wuhan virology lab, in part because that's where the Chinese bioweapons program is located. But there are really two things that are going on behind the scenes here. So number one, what did the Chinese know and when did they know it? If it was a lab leak and they knew it was lethal and they knew it was highly contagious, why did they not warn the world? Why did they shut travel within China, shut it down? And yet they let people from Wuhan go all over the world. That's how it spread to, infect millions and millions of people and result in all the deaths. But the second question, which I think the committee will get to eventually, is what was the role of Dr. Fauci in all of this? Why did he was so insistent that it didn't come from a lab leak? Was there some involvement with Dr. Fauci's lab programs? There's something called gain-of-function research, which takes a relatively harmless virus and makes it more lethal and more contagious in pursuit of science, apparently. But were we somehow involved? We don't have the answers to those questions yet, and I hope the subcommittee will get there sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and Mark Tepper's with me on set, KT, and I will say this, I remember when Dr. Fauci was sitting there and he was defending Chinese scientists. Oh, they're colleagues, they're good people, we work with them. I mean, that went on for years, 2 years at least.
Yeah.
And to KT's point, come on.
And not only that, but Dr. Fauci, under sworn testimony, 174 times when asked about the lab leak theory, said, I don't recall or I do not recall. 174 times. And now it turns out that throughout the pandemic, Big Pharma made record profits. There's also that royalty payment from Moderna to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which was run by Dr. Anthony Fauci. So something smells like a rat here.
And KT, we should also, add the billions of dollars that went to that lab that we believe did, to your point, fund gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab.
Yeah, there are more questions than there are answers, and part of it is that the answers are really pretty scary. Was the United States funding gain-of-function research at that lab? Maybe not directly, but was it indirectly? Cheryl, I was President Trump's first Deputy National Security Advisor, and when we came in the White House, there was no discussion of this. We later found out that the Obama administration had shut down Dr. Fauci's gain-of-function research activities as too dangerous. But somehow it got turned back on. Maybe it got turned back on. If so, who gave permission for that? It certainly was not the President of the United States, and it certainly wasn't the National Security Advisor, and it certainly wasn't the higher levels of the Trump administration. So, again, a lot of unanswered questions. And maybe the point is, follow the money.
Well, I have to ask you about that. I mean, if you can't answer, I understand for security reasons, but was Fauci potentially doing gain-of-function research here in the United States, or was this specifically the money and the funding that was going towards China's gain-of-function research? Can you say?
Okay, that's a really good question. And I looked in open sources to see was there anything in there. I didn't want to look at the classified sources because I didn't want to be compromised by them. And what it was pretty clear is that when Dr. Fauci was testifying, especially under questioning by Senator Rand Paul, he was very lawyerly in his answer. He said, we are not supporting gain-of-function research in the United States. And, okay, that begs the question, were you funding it somewhere else? And what the heck was the United States doing, having any kind of donation to the Chinese virology lab? That's a pretty serious point. If the United States is looking at China as our most, global competitor, I think our strategic adversary.
And to your point, Rand Paul has been all over Fauci. They've had a lot of very testy exchanges in Washington over this. I want to move on to this other topic with you, KT. Sergeant Tyler Vargas Andrews, a Marine sniper. He served in Afghanistan during the botched U.S. withdrawal. He gave this emotional testimony in front of House Foreign Affairs yesterday. Watch this.
I opened my eyes to Marines dead or unconscious lying around me. There was an inexcusable lack of accountability and negligence. The 11 Marines, 1 sailor, and 1 soldier that were murdered that day have not been answered for.
Oh, KT, he said that his warnings were ignored. He was told not to shoot a suspected suicide bomber, and that was just moments before that deadly blast. 13 U.S. service members were killed.
Yeah, I mean, it just speaks to the utter incompetence and failure of the U.S. government, starting in the West Wing of the White House, in this shambolic Afghanistan withdrawal. The people on the ground warned that it was going to end in tragedy. They had a different plan for how we should get out of Afghanistan, but the White House ignored them. President Biden made the decision himself. And there was one mistake after another at the various high levels of government. This is history, and it's important to find out what happened, and it's important to hold those people accountable. But my worry, Cheryl, going forward, are we about to get involved in Afghanistan in Ukraine? Are the same people who made the decisions about the shambolic withdrawal from Afghanistan in charge of the American national security interests in Ukraine? We know that we're increasing our military contribution, and that may be well and good. But where does it stop, and what is the end game here? Is the end game that they think the United States should become militarily involved? They haven't ruled that out. And that, I think, is equally troubling as we get to the final stages of the Ukraine war, where Russia is making advances and Russia has a scorched earth policy. Does that trigger some kind of U.S. or NATO involvement? We'll have to see.
We have to run, but really quick, I have to ask you, just to follow up on that, how worried are you about China and Taiwan? I've heard 2024 is a prediction of when China would invade Taiwan. I've heard sooner, I've heard not at all. What is your best guess on this one, obviously from your experience, KT?
Okay, well, I've studied China for 50 years.
Exactly.
The Chinese don't want to invade Taiwan. They want to have the ability to do it, show the world they have the ability to do it, and then have everybody, concede that China gets Taiwan. I think it's within the next couple of years. The United States is unprepared. All of the Pentagon wargaming strategies of China taking Taiwan, China assuming control of Taiwan, China blockading Taiwan, none of them succeed. The only way there's at least a contest is if the United States gets involved militarily, and most of the wargaming says even then, Taiwan and the United States lose.
And there's so much fatigue right now because of Afghanistan that many Americans in polling show that their trepidation about getting more involved in the Ukraine-Russia war, and then you add on top of that China and Taiwan, and all these American lives that have been lost, in particular in Afghanistan. Anyway, KT McFarland, it is always great to speak with you, and your insights are always incredible. Thank you.